Hear the word of the Lord. Esther chapter 4. Now Mordecai came to know of all that had been done, and he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the midst of the city, and cried out loudly and bitterly. And he went as far as the king's gate, for no one was to enter the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. Now in each and every province, where the word and law of the king reached, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing, and many made their bed in sackcloth and ashes. Then Esther's young women and her eunuchs came and told her, and the queen writhed in great anguish. And she sent garments to clothe Mordecai and to remove his sackcloth from upon him, but he did not accept them. Then Esther summoned Hathach from the king's eunuchs, whom the king had appointed to attend her, and commanded him to go to Mordecai to know what this was and why it was. So Hathach went out to Mordecai to the city square in front of the king's gate. And Mordecai told him all that had happened to him, and the exact amount of silver that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries to cause the Jews to perish. He also gave him a copy of the written law which had been given in Susa for their destruction, in order to show Esther and to tell her and to command her to go into the king to implore his favor and to seek him out for her people. Then Hathach came back and told Mordecai's words to Esther. Then Esther spoke to Hathach and commanded him to reply to Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that for any man or woman who comes to the king to the inner court who is not summoned, he has but one law, that he be put to death, unless the king holds out to him the golden scepter so that he may live. And I have not been summoned to come to the king for these 30 days. So they told Esther's words to Mordecai. Then Mordecai said for them to respond to Esther, "Do not imagine that you in the king's house can escape any more than all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise from the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not reached royalty for such a time as this?" Then Esther said for them to respond to Mordecai, "Go, gather all the Jews who are found in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my young women also will fast in the same way. And thus I will go in to the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish." So Mordecai went away and did just as Esther had commanded him. Esther chapter 5. Now it happened on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's house in front of the king's rooms. And the king was sitting on his royal throne in the throne room opposite the entrance to his house. Now it happened that when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, she advanced in favor in his eyes. And the king extended to Esther the golden scepter which was in his hand. So Esther came near and reached out and touched the top of the scepter. Then the king said to her, "What is troubling you, Queen Esther? And what is your request? Even to half of the kingdom it shall be given to you." And Esther said, "If it seems good to the king, may the king and Haman come this day to the feast that I have prepared for him." Then the king said, "Bring Haman quickly, that we may do the word of Esther." So the king and Haman came to the feast which Esther had prepared. Then as they drank their wine at the feast, the king said to Esther, "What is your petition? For it shall be given to you. And what is your request? Even to half of the kingdom it shall be done." So Esther answered and said, "My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the eyes of the king, and if it seems good to the king to give heed to my petition and to do my request, may the king and Haman come to the feast which I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do according to the word of the king." Then Haman went out that day, glad and merry of heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, and that he did not stand up or tremble before him, Haman was filled with wrath against Mordecai. But Haman controlled himself, went to his house, and sent and brought for his friends and his wife Zeresh. Then Haman recounted to them the glory of his riches and the number of his sons, and every instance where the king had magnified him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman also said, "Even Esther the queen, let no one but me come with the king to the feast which she had prepared, and tomorrow also I am called to come to her with the king. Yet all of this is worth nothing to me every time I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate." Then Zeresh his wife and all his friends said to him, "Have a gallows 50 cubits high made, and in the morning say to the king that Mordecai should be hanged on it. Then go gladly with the king to the feast." And the word was good to Haman, so he had the gallows made. Esther chapter 6. During that night, sleep had fled from the king. So he said for them to bring the book of memoranda, the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written what Mordecai had told concerning Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs from those who were doorkeepers, that they had sought to send forth their hand against King Ahasuerus. And the king said, "What honor or greatness has been done to Mordecai for this?" Then the king's young men who attended him said, "Nothing has been done for him." So the king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had entered the outer court of the king's house in order to speak to the king about hanging Mordecai on the gallows which he had set up for him. And the king's young men said to him, "Behold, Haman is standing in the court." And the king said, "Let him come in." So Haman came in, and the king said to him, "What is to be done for the man whom the king delights to honor?" And Haman said in his heart, "Whom would the king delight to honor more than me?" Then Haman said to the king, "For the man whom the king delights to honor, let them bring a royal robe, which the king clothes himself in, and the horse on which the king is ridden, and on whose head a royal crown has been placed. And let the robe and the horse be given over to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes. And let them clothe the man whom the king delights to honor, and lead him on horseback through the city square, and call out before him, 'Thus it shall be done to the man whom the king delights to honor.'" Then the king said to Haman, "Take quickly the robes and the horse as you have said, and do so for Mordecai the Jew, who is sitting at the king's gate. Do not fall short in anything of all that you have spoken." So Haman took the royal robe and the horse, and clothed Mordecai, and led him on horseback through the city square, and called out before him, "Thus it shall be done to the man whom the king delights to honor." Then Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman hastened home, mourning with his head covered. And Haman recounted to Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had happened to him. Then his wise men and Zeresh his wife said to him, "If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of the seed of the Jews, you will not overcome him, but will surely fall before him." While they were still speaking with him, the king's eunuchs reached Haman's home and hastily brought Haman to the feast which Esther had prepared.